Good morning, class. Mr. Anderson here. It is Wednesday when you will be watching this, and I want to just give you an example of my own poem that I wrote. So this one was in your rubric. You've probably glazed over it, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about how I got there, how I arrived at this ballad poetry that I put together. So, as I've recommended you to do, I took a trip outside. I went to a park and I sat down and I looked at this log where I saw this turtle sitting there right in the sun. You can see it and off to the right there that there was some other turtles on that log. I'll show you the video. I'll attach the video at the end of when I was actually looking at this in person. Um, so I sat down at a scenic little overlook in the swamp, and then I just let my mind run wild. So I thought about that turtle and I said, what could be the story behind this turtle? What could this turtle be up to? And then I saw there was one turtle in the other log that was smaller than all the rest. So I started thinking, what could be the story of this baby turtle? And I started noticing the other creatures, the other ducks that were around, and the birds as well. I'll start with my first stanza for you. Turtles in the sun. The glistening sun had blessed the pond and held each of its children near. The lily pads and toads and birds, and most of all the turtles dear. They rested in the light on high, they rested on the log below. But balancing grew challenging as the gentle breeze began to blow. That's just description. And as I talked to you before, it's best to start with just description because you have to get your setting out of the way, especially if you're doing a ballad, which is narrative, remember. Because they need to be able to picture it. Poetry is always visual, almost always visual. So let's see what happens after this. I'm going to develop a bit of a plot. The ducks just laughed a hollow quack, their buoyant bodies floating about, and bubbled off to deeper brooks to bother other beasts, no doubt. Now, when you read that out loud, you might notice something that you didn't hear in your own head, and that is all of the bee sounds. The hollow quack, their buoyant bodies floating about and bobbled off to deeper brooks. In order to say that, you have to keep making the B sound repeat over and over. And that is called alliteration because it's a part of the word at the beginning. The first sound gets repeated over and over. This was in our literary devices tool set that we were building before I let you write your own poem. So that would be something to think. The youngest one, a tyke of 12, short days under the glistening sun, had lost his grip and taken a slip and tumbled down to algae scum. So if you haven't noticed, I'm doing a bit of a rhyme scheme here, as you are expected to have a rhyme scheme in your poem. I have a basic A, B, C, B, where the second and fourth the second and fourth line in the stanzas all rhyme. But then, as I mentioned before, you are welcome to have some extra internal rhymes to make it sound more exciting. So, like when I have, but balancing grew challenging. That's an example of an internal rhyme. I'm rhyming those two words within the line. The turtlet. I made up a word. That's okay. Turtlet. There's actually no clear name for baby turtle, so I just imagined this would work. The turtlet shrank into his shell and shunned the brave new world above. He bellowed out a turtle shout. I'm done with this. I've had enough. The otter nearby heard the cry and shivered at his great despair. She worried for her timid heart and swam through mud to meet him there. Alliteration can even work if the full word doesn't follow. So through mud to meet him there. You can kind of hear the M sound very easily there. She nudged the shaking shell around and carried him backward toward his log. It's better than you think, this world, and even in this muddy bog. Little friend inside the shell, come outside and smell the dell. Bathe under the glistening sun and live as though you never fell. So, in real life, I did not hear the turtles conversing with the otters. I didn't see an otter. This is a very small pond. But in my mind, I wanted to incorporate some story of how this turtle learned a lesson. I turned it into a deeper narrative than just a visual. And that's what I want to practice. What I want you to practice in the poem that you're writing is finding depth in your poem by taking it a step beyond simply what you see and trying to imagine something that could be a lesson or a message, and not just a corny one. Maybe you think mine is babyish. Maybe you want something more serious. By all means, please do. Um, I think that there's some universal message about having courage to keep trying and trying again. That's actually worth hearing, regardless of whether you're a baby or a child or an adult. But if you want something that's a little more grim, poetry allows you to use your voice in the way that you would like to. So maybe you're looking at a rainy day and there's all sorts of leaves on the ground and it looks kind of bleak. You can write into that mood as well. It's up to you. But make sure there's some depth beyond just the descriptive. That's my tip for you today, and I hope you enjoyed this poem. And it does not have to be this long, by the way. Ballad poetry usually takes a while because you're telling a story, but you can do a lyric poem that's much shorter as long as you have at least 3 stanzas of how many lines? That's right, you need 3 lines per stanza, bare minimum. And by the way, I've received a few poems that have had a rhyme scheme of just the same rhyme every single line. That's an amazing feat, but make sure you don't have to do that. I just want you to know. Usually the rhyme scheme starts over every stanza. So see how I rhyme near and dear in the first stanza, but then in the next one, the rhyme is a different sound, below and blow. So it can change each stanza. You don't have to use the same sounds for each stanza. Just wanted to clarify that on the rhyme scheme. All right, I'm going to keep this short again today. Thank you so much for checking in, and we are almost at the end of the school year. It's time to celebrate. All right, but we got to stay strong until the very end. I'll talk to you tomorrow.